My name is Marina Ivanova. I am 30 years old, and I am the former vice president of operations for Ivanov and Sons, a family-owned construction business in St. Petersburg. That day, I was sitting in a cozy coffee shop on Nevsky Prospect, sipping hot black tea, when my phone vibrated. A voicemail from Mikhail Ivanov's father. His voice was cold, businesslike, lacking its usual warmth. Marina, the board of directors has decided to restructure the management. You are no longer in the family business. Access to the systems has been revoked. Your position is occupied. Don't come to the office. Don't call. Personal belongings will be delivered to your apartment. This is the final decision. 15 seconds and everything I had built for 7 years, 70 hours a week, millions of dollars in new contracts. My identity, my future disappeared. My hands were shaking, but my face remained motionless, while the voices of other visitors buzzed around me. I put my phone down, took a deep breath, and typed one word in response. I understand. That word became my shield, my only way to maintain my dignity as my world crumbled. If you're reading this, please leave a comment where you're from and support my story by subscribing. Ivanov and Sons was more than just a company. It was my heritage, my home. I grew up in St. Petersburg, breathing in the smell of construction dust and blueprints. My father started the business 35 years ago with one truck, a set of tools, and an iron will. His mother, Galina Ivanova, said that concrete flowed through his veins instead of blood. My first memories are of my father lifting me onto his shoulders at a construction site, showing me how to lay a foundation. You see, Marina, everything starts with a solid foundation, he said. By the age of 10, I was reading technical drawings. By 14, I was helping with the bookkeeping during the summer holidays. Construction was in my blood. When it came time to choose a university, there was no doubt. I enrolled at St. Petersburg State University, studying business management and energy-efficient building design. I graduated with honors, gave the commencement speech, and received offers from 3 major Russian construction firms. My father feigned surprise when I turned them down to join Ivanov and Sons, but the pride in his eyes was genuine. Are you sure, Marina? This is a serious offer, he asked, but we both knew where I belonged. I started with project management, avoiding any hint of patronage. I worked harder than anyone else, arriving before dawn and leaving late at night. The crews respected me not because I was the boss's daughter, but because I knew my business and never asked others to do anything I wouldn't do myself. When I pointed out an inefficiency in the supply chain that was costing us millions of rubles, my father promoted me to operations manager. By the age of 27, I had become vice president of operations. In the 5 years I was at the helm, the company's revenue doubled. My innovative management methods and focus on energy-efficient technologies made us leaders in the construction industry in northwest Russia. Family relationships were more complicated. My mother always supported me, but preferred to stay in the shadows, taking care of the house, while my father built an empire. She was proud of me, but she was worried about my total dedication to work. My older brother Dmitri, 3 years older, always lagged behind. He had the charisma to attract clients, but he did not follow through. I often corrected his mistakes, promises we could not keep, calculations made without consulting engineers. But my father was lenient with him. He will find himself yet, Marina. Not everyone runs away like you, he said. Despite this, father made it clear that one day it will be yours and Dmitri's equal partnership of the Ivanov heritage. I believed him implicitly. Why not? I have dedicated my life to ensuring that this legacy flourishes. Last year, we began our most ambitious project yet. The Nevsky Prospect Complex is a residential building with commercial premises, built using eco-friendly materials, solar panels, and rainwater collection systems. It was my idea, my vision of the company's future. At the groundbreaking ceremony, my father gave me a golden shovel. "This is your project, Marina," he said in front of everyone. I felt the weight of that shovel and its correctness in my hands, the clarity of my path. That evening, he raised a toast to Marina, who sees what buildings should be. Everyone applauded, even Dmitri, though his smile was strained. How could I have known then that 6 months later I would find myself in a coffee shop, looking at a phone, cut off from the future I was building? The foundation I thought was solid was already cracking, ready to burst open. My life was inextricably linked to Ivanov and Sons. Since childhood, I absorbed the construction business, like the air of St. Petersburg, saturated with dampness and history. At 10, I already understood technical drawings, and at 14, helping with accounting in the summer, I learned to find errors in supplier invoices. This was not just a job, it was my calling. At St. Petersburg State University, I studied business management and energy-efficient building design, graduating with honors. I gave a speech at my graduation, and 3 major Russian construction companies offered me jobs. I turned them all down, choosing the family business. Father Mikhail Ivanov looked at me with pride, but asked, "Marina, are you sure?" I was sure. Having started with project management, I worked harder than anyone else, arriving with the first rays of the sun and leaving when the city was already asleep. The teams respected me for my knowledge and willingness to take on any task myself. When I uncovered inefficiencies in supply chains that were costing us millions of rubles, my father promoted me to operations manager. By age 27, I was vice president of operations. In my 5 years at the helm, the company's revenue doubled, and my ideas for energy-efficient construction made us leaders in the Northwest. I introduced new project management methods and eco-friendly materials, which attracted the attention of the press and clients. The Nevsky Prospect Project, a residential complex with commercial premises, became my crowning achievement. It embodied my vision of a house with solar panels, rainwater collection systems, and green areas. At the groundbreaking ceremony, my father handed me a golden shovel, calling the project my baby. It was a moment of triumph, confirmation that I belonged. But in the family, things were more complicated. My mother, Galina, supported me, but she was worried about my obsession with work. She rarely talked about the company's affairs, preferring to take care of the house. My brother Dmitri, 3 years older than me, worked in sales. His charisma attracted clients, but he often promised the impossible, and I had to correct his mistakes. My father protected him. Dmitri will find himself, Marina. I believed that my brother and I would inherit the company as equal partners, as our father had promised. But the first cracks in that foundation appeared 3 months before that fateful voicemail. At a quarterly meeting, I presented a plan to expand the use of sustainable materials. The numbers confirmed success. Our energy-efficient projects were bringing in premium profits and positive reviews. But my father, looking at his watch, interrupted me. "Let's put that aside, Marina. There are more urgent matters." He didn't specify which ones. That same week, I noticed that my father and Dmitri were having lunch together every day in the office. When I approached, they fell silent, just family talk. My father waved me off. Then came Roman Petrov, an old friend of my father's from university, a former top manager of a large construction corporation. My father introduced him as a strategic consultant without consulting me. "Roman knows business, he will help with expansion," he said when I asked. Roman, tall, with a wiry demeanor and a loud laugh, quickly settled into the office, studying our contracts and processes. His questions about clients were persistent, almost interrogative. When I asked to see his reports, my father said they weren't ready yet. Soon, I noticed my decisions being reversed. The green supplier I had carefully selected was dropped. The new manager I had hired was transferred to another project. The advertising campaign for Nevsky Prospect has been postponed without explanation. The answers were evasive. "We are reviewing. It is a matter of time." One day I entered the conference room and found my father, Dmitri, Roman, and 2 members of the council discussing the drawings. These were changes in the Nevsky Prospect project, excluding energy-efficient elements, solar panels, and a water collection system. "What's going on?" I asked, not hiding my indignation. My father, slightly confused, replied, "We're simply studying optimization options." Roman added that the profitability of these functions may be overestimated. I objected that I checked the calculations myself, but my father interrupted. Marina, we'll discuss this later. I felt the walls closing in. These weren't small things. This was a departure from my vision, from the project that everyone had approved. That evening, my assistant, Anna Kuznetsova, asked to speak privately. We met in the office park. I shouldn't tell you, she began, looking around. But they hold secret meetings when you're on site. Roman and his son Alexei were in the office. They were being shown around your office. As if Alexei had already been hired. I tried to find an explanation. Maybe it was for expansion, but why without me? Why in secret? The premonition of trouble grew. But I couldn't imagine how close the disaster had been. After that voice message cut me off from Ivanov and Sons, I lived in a daze. The St. Petersburg rain pounded the windows, and I tried to understand what had happened. My life, built on the foundation of a family business, collapsed in 15 seconds. I did not answer calls from clients and colleagues. I could not explain that I was fired via text message, without a conversation, without a reason. On the third day of family silence, I could not stand it and wrote to Anna Kuznetsova, my assistant. We met in a small coffee shop on Vasilievsky Island, away from the office. She looked worried, looking around every now and then. I've been told not to talk to you, she began, fiddling with her napkin. They made everyone sign a non-disclosure agreement. I asked them to tell me what happened. She sighed. It all happened on Monday, after your meeting with Viktor Sokolov. Father gathered everyone and announced that the company was returning to its roots in elite residential projects. You were introduced as having resigned of your own accord, and Alexei Petrov, Roman's son, became the new vice president of operations. I felt the blood drain from my face. Alexei, he had been getting used to the departments for weeks already. Anna continued. Even worse, my initiatives, energy-efficient technologies, partnerships with local communities, diversity in hearing, were being curtailed. The Nevsky Prospect project was converted into luxury apartments without eco-friendly elements. Roman convinced your father that luxury brings quick profits, she added. And I also heard your father discussing treatment, something with his heart. It was like a blow. Why didn't he tell me? Anna hesitated. I don't know the details, but he was talking about medical procedures. The puzzle began to come together. Roman Petrov had organized a coup, putting his son in my place. Dmitri, who had always envied my success, supported them. Together, they convinced my father that my ideas were taking the company in the wrong direction. When I returned home, I found 4 boxes delivered by courier. My things from the office, family photos, awards, plants I had watered for 5 years, diplomas all jumbled up, frames cracked, earth crumbled. The last box contained a document, a severance agreement with 3 months' pay, and a note from my father. Sign and return for payment. I threw the paper down as if it were burning my hands. That evening, I started looking for the truth. I called a classmate who worked at a competing company. He confirmed the rumors. Ivanov and his sons are moving towards luxury housing. There are talks about financial difficulties. Someone mentioned that the father is looking for investors. This was stunning. I checked the finances a week ago. Everything was in order. I made a chronology, Roman's appearance, secret meetings, cancellation of my projects, Alexei's arrival. It was not a spontaneous move, but a planned conspiracy. The most painful part is that in my personal inbox, I found letters from clients who were surprised by the changes I supposedly approved. Contracts were rewritten, my words were distorted. They didn't just remove me, they used my name to destroy everything I had built. Lawyer Svetlana Ryabova, having studied my documents, issued a harsh verdict. You signed a standard agreement giving the council, where your father presides, complete power. The clause, who is not competition, prohibits working with Ivanov's clients. 2 years, almost no legal leverage. I left her feeling crushed. My trust became my own trap. After 2 weeks, I decided to have a direct conversation. On Sunday, when we always had family dinners, I went to my parents. There were cars in the entryway. My father's Range Rover, my mother's Volvo, Dimitri's Audi, and two unfamiliar cars, probably the Petrovs. They were having dinner without me. Through the windows, I saw them at the table. Mom was handing out dishes, Dad at the head. Dimitri was telling something, Roman and Alexei were laughing. It was a picture of betrayal. I wanted to burst in to demand answers, but something stopped me. Calm, cold, and hard engulfed me. I started the car and drove away, my resolve growing. The next day, my mother wrote, "Coffee tomorrow, just us." We met in a quiet coffee shop away from the office. Mom looked tired, older. She hugged me for a little longer than usual. "I'm sorry, Marina," she said, sitting down. "I didn't mean to." I asked why I had been expelled. She looked away. "Father has heart problems, serious ones. Surgery is needed, long recovery period." He panicked for the future of the company. Roman convinced him that I was planning to seize control, to oust Dimitri, using my father's illness. "That's a lie," I countered. "I discussed the succession at my father's request." Mom nodded. Roman showed letters, meeting notes, conversations with clients about the new management. Dimitri helped by distorting my words. They decided that Alexei would lead the operation, and Dimitri would lead the clients, returning family values. I was family, but I was erased. My father was afraid to confront me face to face, so he chose voicemail. As she left, my mother promised to talk to him after the surgery, but I knew the bridges were burned. After the betrayal that left me without a family or a job, I was at rock bottom. The St. Petersburg rain reflected my mood as I moved from a spacious apartment to a small studio in a residential area to save money. The compensation my father had offered lay unsigned. Accepting it meant admitting their lies, but pride didn't pay for housing. My attempts to find work in the construction industry were failing, and Ivanov's, who had once opened doors, became an obstacle. Clients I had spent years building relationships with were not responding. A non-compete agreement was hampering me, prohibiting me from working with partners Ivanov and Sons. One night, sitting on the floor among unpacked boxes, I was leafing through old photos, projects I had led, holidays with the team, family moments in the office. In the photo from the Nevsky Prospect Foundation, my father was hugging me, both of us in helmets with golden shovels. His smile seemed sincere. Was he really planning to push me out back then? I almost gave up, thinking of leaving the city, changing my profession, becoming, perhaps, a teacher or a realtor. But then the phone rang. Unknown number. Marina Ivanova answered, my voice trembling from fatigue. "Marina, this is Ekaterina Volkova," came the voice on the other end of the line. Ekaterina, the owner of a small firm called Volkovo Development, which specializes in affordable housing, worked with me 2 years ago. We built an award-winning residential complex for its innovative design on a budget. "I heard you were leaving," she said. "I don't know the details and I don't care. You were the best project manager I ever worked with. We have a contract for the community center in Viborg. Tight budget, difficult site, energy efficiency requirements. We need you." I hesitated, citing the non-compete agreement, but Ekaterina assured me. Her project was not related to the Ivanovs' clients, and I would be a consultant, not an employee of a competitor. She gave me time to think. The call was a ray of light in the darkness. The next day, I met Grigory Volkov, my father's former partner, who left the business 15 years ago. In his modest home with a workshop where he made furniture, Grigory was straightforward. "Your father is repeating the mistake he made with me, pushing out those who move the company forward out of fear of change." He told me how Mikkel had rigged his share, destroying their friendship for the sake of control. Grigory handed me his diaries, where he described the early years of the company, then Volkov and Ivanov. As I read them, I saw a repeating pattern. My grandfather had also forced his brother out of the family business, accusing him of disloyalty. This was not my failure, but a family tradition of fear and mistrust. Understanding gave me freedom. The next morning, I called Ekaterina and agreed. Then I sat down at the kitchen table and sketched out a plan for a new company, Green Horizon, a consulting firm on energy-efficient construction. I registered it, created a simple website, ordered business cards with the inscription Marina Ivanova, founder. The project of the center in Viborg became my salvation. I immersed myself in it, researching materials that combined ecology and budget. My decisions about a passive system instead of expensive technologies impressed the community council. Their approval was the first confirmation of my value without the Ivanov's name. I touched the warm foundation of the center under construction, recalling my father's words. Everything begins with a solid foundation. Now I was building my own, both resilience and independence. A year later, I stood in a Moscow hall at the awards ceremony for sustainable construction in Russia. Green Horizon was nominated for innovation in the Viborg Center project. We completed it on time, on budget, exceeding expectations for energy efficiency. The center became the heart of the neighborhood, just as I dreamed. When the winner of the Green Horizon was announced, I felt that this year had more justified itself. In my speech, I thanked Ekaterina for her trust, the community council for the partnership, and dedicated the award to those who are starting anew. After the ceremony, small business owners approached me with proposals. My calendar filled up with consultations. Green Horizon was growing. I hired 2 assistants and planned to hire a manager. We moved to a small office in the Petrogradsky district. The irony of fate, my father fired me from the family company, and I created my own, based on my ideals. For the first time in months, I felt hope. I hadn't just survived, I was building a future I hadn't expected, but one that was mine. The success of Green Horizon had been my rebirth, but the shadow of the past still loomed over me. St. Petersburg lived its own life, and I learned to build a new one without Ivanov and Sons. In the evening, when the city was enveloped in twilight, the phone vibrated. The name of Galina's mother was on the screen. "Marina, my father is having a heart attack." Her voice trembled. Despite the pain of betrayal, he was still my father. "How?" I asked. "Tabalin, they did an emergency operation. But it's serious, he wants to see you." I sat, looking out the window into the darkness. He fired me via voicemail, let Dmitry and Roman Petrov ruin my reputation, cut me out of the family without a word. But my mother's words, "He may not have much time," echoed in my chest. The hospital room was quiet, only the beeping of monitors broke the silence. Father Mikhail looked small, surrounded by tubes. Mother held his hand. Dmitry was absent. Father opened his eyes. Recognition and shame flashed in them. "Marina, you've come," he whispered. I nodded. "Mom said you called." He coughed. I did the unforgivable. I did not argue or console. Yes, I did. He looked away. Fear was driving me. Fear of losing control. Fear that the company will no longer be mine. Fear of becoming unnecessary. Roman used this, convinced me that you wanted to push me out. I objected. Everything I did was to strengthen your case. He nodded. Now I know. Without you, Ivanov and his sons are not the same. We are in trouble, Marina. Part of me wanted to enjoy this confession, but it was empty. I'm sorry, but I have my own company. The Green Horizon flourishes. Pride flashed in his eyes. You do what I could not. You change, you grow. We talked for almost an hour. Not only about business, but also about family. About the repeated mistakes of generations. About how the fear of losing control destroyed the Ivanovs' legacy. The reconciliation was not complete. My father apologized to me directly, but I did not give him full forgiveness. But we found an understanding of acknowledging what was lost and what could still be saved. Not in business, but in the family. As he was leaving, he said, "Yours." I understood in response to my message. Then I doubted for the first time. You didn't beg, didn't argue. You answered with dignity, which I didn't show. I clarified. It wasn't consent. It was my only way of not letting you see me break down. He nodded. You are stronger than all the Ivanovs. You built a new one from scratch. I was just following the old path. In the months that followed, our family began to heal cautiously. My mother and I resumed weekly dinners where we would serve borscht and discuss life. My father and I rarely spoke, avoiding painful topics. Dmitri later apologized when the partnership with the Petrovs collapsed, leaving him with the consequences of their decisions. Ivanov and his sons survived, but in a truncated form. The troubled Nevsky Prospect project was sold to a developer who, ironically, hired Green Horizon to bring back the green elements. My father stepped down as CEO, becoming a minimal board chairman. I declined the offer to return, realizing that burned bridges are too fragile, but occasionally consulted on their projects, a professional courtesy that did not touch old wounds. 2 years later, I was standing on the construction site of a new Green Horizon project in Moscow, in partnership with Ekaterina Volkova. We were building affordable housing for health workers, energy-efficient, community-oriented. As I drove the ceremonial shovel into the ground, I thought about foundations. They must be strong but flexible to withstand change. The voicemail that shattered my world freed me from my family's expectations, allowing me to create a business that reflected my values. I understood it was not a capitulation, but the first word of a new chapter written by me. It was an oath to myself, to believe in my value beyond the Ivanovs' name, to build my life on honesty and fortitude. Today, looking at the team in the Green Horizon helmets, I am grateful for that painful lesson. Losing my legacy meant finding my way. Being cast out meant finding my way back to myself. If you've experienced betrayal and are starting over, let my story inspire you. Strength is found when everything familiar falls apart. The strongest buildings are built on the ashes of what we thought we couldn't live without. Thank you for walking this path with me. Share this story with those who need to know. Survival and even thriving is possible after loss. Comment below to share how you rebuilt your life after a crash. Subscribe to learn more about the story of resilience. And remember, understood is not the end, but the beginning of a dialogue with yourself about who you are and what you can create.